Okay, we'll start with this. It would appear that former featherweight champion Erika Cruz is set to return to action later on this month on the 16th against Mary Cruz. Very common last name. Otherwise known as La Irlandesa. In what will be Erika Cruz's first fight in a very long time, since having paired up with Universal Promotions, who extended their warmest welcome to the former champion, one of the great queens of Mexican boxing. She joins Stephanie Piñeiro, Litzy Adeline Vasquez, and Esmeralda Falcón under the Universal Promotions banner. Sporting a professional record of 17 wins with 2 losses, 1 draw, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 20 professional bouts. Last in action in May of last year, approximately 1 year ago, against Nazarena Romero, where they fought to a split draw. But then it came out that Erika Cruz tested positive for a banned substance afterwards, and we haven't seen her since then. It will be her first fight in a year's time. Going to assume that the former champion is fighting somewhere in between 122 and 126 pounds, as those are the weights where she normally campaigns, it being that the contest is not registered on BoxRec. Very accomplished fighter with a solid resume, some very solid names there. Melissa Esquivel, a former champion, and Jelena Marjanovic, a seasoned contender, and Melissa Odessa Parker, Mayerlene Rivas. What about the Peds? What do you think about that? The frequency of fighters that are now testing positive for banned substances as a result of the normalization of anti-doping testing in boxing gives you the impression that everybody at the highest levels, the men, the women, are on something. And if everybody's on something, you have to wonder if it's really cheating when it's the industry standard, because I've heard that said by professional boxers more than once. When anyone from Hannah Gabriels to Alicia Baumgartner to Alejandra Jimenez to Erika Cruz test positive for a banned substance, Heather Hardy, outwardly it just seems like everybody's cheating, quote unquote. And if everybody's cheating, is it still cheating? An ideological question. Because after a while, you're just keeping up with the Joneses, if that is the industry standard. In a word, I don't think much of Erika Cruz's anti-doping fiasco. It's just another one for the books. As far as her ring return, she has always been one of the more fearsome and formidable fighters anywhere in between 122 and 126 pounds. And if she is now returning to the ring and returning to any one of those divisions, she poses a great challenge to anyone there, save Amanda Serrano. Amanda Serrano, who beat her already back in February of 2023. Everyone not having Amanda Serrano's grit and determination, as well as her punching power, her inside game, unless you're Amanda, Erika's a handful. She can be. And her ring return spells trouble for all the other girls at or around these weights. We'll talk more about this fight as the fight date approaches and find out a little bit more about who exactly Erika Cruz is fighting. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, an update to a story we haven't talked about in a while. Boxxer is facing a critical broadcasting dilemma as 4-year Sky Sports deal nears its end. Just like Top Rank's ESPN deal is set to end very soon, the same applies to Boxxer on Sky Sports. Founded by Ben Shalom, they signed a 4-year deal with Sky back in 2021, becoming the exclusive provider for the broadcasting giant across the pond, following Matchroom Boxing's move over to DAZN. The lucrative deal, reportedly valued at £32 million over the duration of the contract, is set to conclude at the end of June, and speculation is growing over the potentiality of a renewal, despite suggestions from Shalom that renegotiations with Sky Sports have taken place. There is still yet to be an official announcement from the promoter stating that they will continue on that channel. Hopefully, we'll have some news very soon, said Shalom. Following the Lauren Price and Natasha Jonas card at the Royal Albert Hall, we've invested in a lot of these fights together from the debut, all finally getting to a point in their careers, which is really exciting. We'll have some news soon and some big fights to be announced. What seems like an open-ended comment. Wide-eyed optimism, maybe? When he says, hopefully we'll have some news soon. Well, hopefully I get to motorboat Sydney Sweeney's boobs. While we're on the subject of hope, a news article published by Talk Sports suggested a renewal had been agreed, was swiftly removed, leaving many questioning Boxxer's future and the potential implications for the promotion. Rumors surrounding the future of the deal suggest that the promotion could be offered a fight-by-fight agreement with Sky Sports as opposed to a renewed multi-year partnership. The difference is that would allow Sky the wiggle room to invest or not invest in a show based on who's on it. That's more wiggle room for Sky, but less of a commitment to Boxxer as opposed to a multi-year agreement that gives Boxxer more resources to do more shows and develop more talent. A commitment like that from Sky. If Boxxer transitions to a fight-by-fight agreement with Sky rather than securing a long-term partnership, it could signal a period of uncertainty for the promotion. While such an agreement allows greater flexibility for both parties, it also limits Boxxer's ability to plan and promote major events with long-term confidence. For fighters under the Boxxer banner, this could result in fewer guaranteed dates on a major platform, potentially impacting their visibility and career momentum, which would make it a very unstable proposition to continue to box under the Boxxer banner when you don't know with any certainty that you will or won't box on Sky Sports, since they are non-committal. It's believed that some fighters signed to the stable have clauses in their contracts requiring their bouts to be broadcast on Sky. If that condition is no longer met, there's a real possibility that some of the promotion's biggest stars could walk away. Moreover, the absence of a stable broadcasting deal could make it increasingly difficult for Boxxer to compete with rivals Matchroom and Queensberry, both of whom are currently thriving under their respective partnerships with DAZN. With time running out for Shalom and his team, the coming months could prove critical to Boxxer's long-term success and its ability to attract and retain elite talent. What this communicates to me, if the rumor is true, is that Sky Sports has their reservations about what Boxxer can deliver for them and how they will fare in the open market when both Matchroom and Queensberry are over there at DAZN. What does Boxxer have to compete with them? That Sky Sports is now looking to renegotiate the terms as opposed to making another long-term commitment. Essentially an extension. If a broadcaster is pleased with what content you're delivering to their platform, they might sign you to a deal identical to the last one or offer you even more money to deliver more content. But when you see something like this, it's because the broadcaster has their reservations. Maybe you did as good a job as you could have, but you're going to struggle to compete with the other game in town. The broadcaster knows that, so they're not going to go all in. They compare the Boxxer stable to the Matchroom stable or the Queensberry stable, and you can see where they would struggle to compete. Now, Boxxer still has one or two interesting characters over there on their side of things. Ben Whitaker, Frazier Clark, Adam Azim, Chris Billum-Smith, the former champion, he can sell some tickets. Lauren Price, Karis Artingstall, but the buck stops there. And while that's a solid pool of fighters, it's hardly competition for Frank Warren's stable or Eddie Hearns' stable. What's the biggest name under the Boxxer banner? Chris Eubank Jr., I'd say, is the biggest name they've got, but at his age, that guy doesn't have but so many fights left in him. And is he by himself enough to get a long-term commitment from Sky Sports? See, that's where the questions come from. In a situation where they're only dealing with them on a fight-by-fight basis, based on the value of a show, that could leave some fighters out in the cold. Limited ability to keep their fighters active and keep them busy might result in fighters that start to float away, not dissimilar from what we've seen at the PBC the last 2 or 3 years. Where would they go? If you're thinking about a Lauren Price, if you're thinking about a Karis Artingstall or a Savannah Marshall, remember that most valuable promotions just signed Ellie Scottney, who migrated over from Matchroom, so they're not above signing British women fighters, British talent. Caroline Dubois. That if you're wondering, well, where would some of Boxxer's Valkyries go? In a situation where Boxxer can no longer accommodate them, they could always go to MVP. I'm sure they would have them. And I'm sure that some could migrate over to Matchroom, over to Queensbury. Same applies to the men. There are places they can go if Boxxer's ability to accommodate them is inhibited as a result of this latest revelation. And one is left to wonder if their current situation is a byproduct of Ben Shalom's inexperience and ineptitude, as he's developed quite a reputation the past 4 years in attempting to compete with Frank and compete with Eddie.
Why do you say things like that? I mean, I don't get. Oh, Ben, there's something wrong with him. What Eddie was referring to in there, which is why do you say things like that? I mean, I don't get. Oh, Ben, there's something wrong with him. What Eddie was referring to in there, which is basically about him insisting, because it's obviously he has insisted, he puts in contracts where he stands on the stage and things like that, which I've never ever seen ever. Ben's I don't know why he even said that. I'd never try to keep him off the stage. In fact, I did say to him after he sort of barged in front of me, I told him afterwards he wanted to see me off the stage afterwards, I'll gladly accommodate him.
Did he?
No. Weren't in a contract.
I can remember saying a year ago, maybe 2, that perhaps Ben was always doomed to fail because the assignment in front of him was always too big. Trying to compete with Frank, at the same time trying to compete with Eddie, the established game in town, the giants of British boxing, with what little Boxxer had to offer, I don't know that there's anything Ben could have done to better the situation, that perhaps he was always doomed to fail, if he is in fact failing. Overly protective of his fighters and not always willing to make certain fights, but if he would have let Richard Riakporhe fight Jai Opetaia, what would have happened? Jai Opetaia would have took him out. Though we see what happened with Frazier Clark and Fabio Wortley, Ben didn't want to make the fight when Matchroom was involved. All the same, Fabio still beat him, then signed to Queensbury. Seems reluctant to make a Caroline Dubois versus Beatrice Ferreira fight. He's protective of what little he has because he doesn't have very much. But what can he do? Throw caution to the wind? This is what I mean. While it's easy to poke fun and pile on Ben Shalom for his awkwardness and his inexperience, his seeming ineptitude, I don't know that there's anything he could have done to better the situation, because he was already competing with giants. See what the future holds for Boxxer. These are just rumors and should be treated as such. But if Sky is taking a step back from committing to Boxxer, from going all in the way they did 4 years ago, it's not good for Ben. It's not good for Boxxer. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, the continued fallout of the Times Square show, the Saudi Arabia show, Haney versus Ramirez, Canelo versus Scull, fellow content creator and friend to the channel, D Styles, said, most people here that are cool with runners don't even pay for the fights. Well, what's the relevance of that? That if anyone going up to bat for boring fighters that make for boring fights like Devin Haney or William Scull don't actually pay for the fights themselves, then their opinions on it are moot and useless, as you don't represent the consumer. You don't represent the people that pay to see boxing. And boxing being a business, it needs customers, and you're not one of them. So if you're not, what you think doesn't matter. What you say doesn't count. If you're one of these guys defending Devin's performance or William Scull's performance, the Styles continued. It's time for boxing fans to stop two-siding the blame when fights are boring with no action. Blame the negative fighter that is running. Not 50-50, not 60-40, not even 80-20. Enough is enough. You run, you get 100% of the blame. Yeah, I agree with these styles because it's a simple equation. You could do it on a napkin. If you've got two fighters coming forward, like Canelo was coming forward on William, well, you're going to get a fight. You're going to get an action fight. But if you have two fighters like William, two fighters that are hesitant, two fighters that don't really want to engage, you're not going to get a fight. You're going to get a snooze fest. What you're going to get is another Rancis Bartholomew versus Robert Easter fight. Lara versus Gaucher. So why are we supposed to pretend that Canelo is just as responsible as William for that fight being boring? Canelo was trying to make it a fight. As best as he could, he was coming forward against a guy who didn't want to engage, a guy who didn't want to fight, wanted to survive. That's Canelo's fault?
Well, Canelo couldn't catch him.
Why is he supposed to? This is not a game of freeze tag. This is not touch football to where all the onus is on Canelo to make it a fight, but William doesn't have to. William can backpedal on his bicycle for all 36 minutes of the contest without taking any initiative to take it to Canelo, and that's enough for him to win.
That's bullshit.
Previous eras of boxing, a fighter like William Scull would have fast found himself pelleted with beer and popcorn.
Devin Haney, too.
Previous eras of boxing, fighters like those two might have found their purses withheld for not entertaining the crowd, not entertaining the spectators in what is the spectator sport. And when so many of them have the same complaint about the same kind of fighters, whether it's William Scull, Devin Haney, Sky Nicholson.
Because I've seen plenty of people say the same things about her.
People reminisce about the classic fights in previous eras of boxing, and none of them have the aesthetic of Canelo versus Scull or Haney versus Ramirez. And in a very general sense, those kind of fighters have always been frowned upon. But the style was popularized by Floyd Mayweather, who in his later years, after moving up to welter and junior middle, became more economic with his output, focused more on efficiency and accuracy.
There was a noticeable change in him when he moved up in weight. He wasn't the killer that he used to be, wasn't the knockout merchant. And it made for some boring fights. It's just the truth. But these kids, in trying to follow that blueprint,
trying to fight like a 30-year-old Floyd Mayweather has resulted in a lot of ho-hum fights that don't need to be on television. It's a bad advertisement for the sport. And I'm not going to pretend it's in any way Canelo's fault that William chose to run or that Devin did the same thing. You get two guys like that on your TV and you don't want to watch it. But if you have two guys that want to come forward and want to go at it, you got a potential classic, like Inoue versus Cardenas,
like Chris Eubank versus Conor Ben.
That the skewed perception of a vocal minority online that likely doesn't even pay to watch these fights anyway is drowned out by the majority at large.
Nobody wants to see that shit. Don't give me the sweet science bullshit, the skillful bullshit. Skillful is rolling and countering, slipping and countering, within striking distance, in the pocket. That's slickness, that's skill. But what these guys are doing is running.
Catching and countering, and of course you can take breaks from the action to move around, use the ring, but you shouldn't be doing that the whole time.
Because all that accents is a fighter that doesn't want to throw, and he doesn't want to throw because he's hesitant. Doesn't want to engage.
Doesn't think it's safe enough to throw punches, so we end up with a snoozer. And that's supposed to be Canelo's fault.
Oh, shit.
That's what got Rigondeaux kicked off the Showtime platform. Gliding around on ice skates for 36 minutes instead of putting punches together. Did you forget why you're here?